Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Erik Johansson, a teacher with LSAT Demon. And joining me, I am happy to have a veritable who's who of LSAT Demon team members. I will let them introduce themselves, but y'all are in the midst of law school and have assembled you to give a recap on how your 1L or Hayley for you 2L experience has been so far, and just talk about surviving 1L, your experiences, give our listeners just a taste of what awaits them. So why don't we kick off with some introductions? Maybe Chris, I'll start with you and then you can pass it around. Who you are, what you do at the Demon, maybe what law school you're at, and if you can give your, you know what, let's do one word, your one word summary of 1L.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I'm a teacher at LSAT Demon, and I also work with some of the other teachers to plan classes. I'm a rising 2L at WashU in St. Louis, if you couldn't tell based on my gear. And my one word for 1L, I think would be professional.
Professional. Like that. Okay, good. Hayley.
Hey, I'm Hayley. I just work on the customer service team here. So if you've emailed help at least once, you probably talked to me. I'm a rising 3L at the University of Utah. Oh, one word, that's so hard. Maybe fun, honestly.
Excellent. Kevin?
Yeah, I guess I'm the last one. Yeah, I'm Kevin. I'm a teacher, also tutor. I also do video work behind the scenes. So if you see class recordings and you see a problem with it, you need to let me know. That's my doing. So you might have, yeah, I don't teach on a full-time basis. Right now I'm just doing it in the summer. I might hop in and out. But yeah, so I'm a rising 2L at the University of Virginia. And my one word, I think the word I use is supported.
Supported.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of positivity for our one word reactions. That's great to hear. Cool. Well, thanks y'all for being here. Again, I want to get your reactions to law school so far and maybe some ideas of what worked for you, what didn't work for you, lessons that you learned that because it's a pretty opaque process to a lot of people without people in their lives who have been through law school. So hopefully this pulls back the curtain a little bit. Maybe we can start with what your expectations were going into law school, like what it is that you heard about 1L, what it is that you were expecting out of 1L, and the extent to which those expectations were met or shattered. I mean, were there any big surprises that awaited you? Kevin, why don't we start with you?
Sure. To be perfectly honest, I thought it was going to be really, really hard. I was very worried about that aspect. I've heard a lot of horror stories online. Every lawyer, I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, but there's this stereotype that lawyers say, "Oh, you want to be a lawyer? Don't do it. Go do something else." But I think I had some strong legal supporters. I worked with judges and other attorneys before going to school. But they said you got to put the work in, and I was like, okay, does that mean 40-hour work week, where you treat classes and work like that all together in 40 hours, or does that mean twice that? What does it look like? It was hard to judge, and I was, I guess, raising expectations so that if it was easier, I'd be happier about that. And turns out it was a lot easier than I expected. It was closer, I'd say it was closer to like a 50-ish to 60-ish hour work week, I think, if you include classes and all the work together. And then finals, it ramps up. But it's if you prioritize your time management and what you want to do at the school, it becomes totally manageable. It's no different to me than working in any job, really. But I was also, with that expectation, I was thinking, oh, does that mean that everyone's going to be on their own, very isolationist? Like, oh, I'm not going to make any friends because we're all just like, oh, I'm going to get my law degree. I'm going to be number one in my class, all that stuff. But at UVA, by the way, this podcast is going to be a UVA Gush podcast because I love that school. I will do anything for that school. I have never felt more supported in a community in my entire life. I play softball with my section. Like I have 29 really great friends that I never met before law school, but we instantly bonded. And like honestly, that has made the law school experience so much better. So my expectations were really dreary, I guess, and it turned out much better than that.
Awesome. That's great to hear, especially the community that you were able to develop.
Yeah. I was
Hayley,
really looking for that in the law school, and it pulled through. So
good. Did that match your experience, Hayley? Did you go in thinking, oh, this is going to be really, really hard? And then you got there, it was like, oh, actually, I can do this.
Yeah, this is also gonna be an SJQ Gush podcast because I can't talk good enough about the University of Utah. But yeah, I was really worried about how hard it was gonna be because that's all you hear from everyone is like you're never gonna see your friends or your family or see the light of day ever again. I was also really worried about the competitiveness because that's what you hear too, like how competitive it is. I was really concerned. I feel like I knew I could do the work, but I was worried about making friends. I live around 45 minutes away from my law school, so I was worried I'd have FOMO all the time, and that because I was married and living far away, and I was going to be in law school with a lot of people who are single, that I just wouldn't be invited to things. And I feel like I wanted to be part of a community so bad, and so I was more worried that I don't know, wouldn't have like an escape or a group to go to, but that luckily ended up not being the case. Like I agree with Kevin, it's probably about 50, 60 hours a week is the effort. And then I'm a little crazy, way more crazy than most people during finals week, and I just don't ever leave that building. They should just set me up a tent during finals week because I'm leaving usually at midnight or 1 and then back again at 7, but that's not normal people don't need to do that. And then my class ended up actually just being really great. We only have around 100 people per grade at my law school. So there's no sections. It's like our entire like class is a section. Like I've had a class with at least one person in my entire class. There's like 96 of us, I think that started.
Uh-huh.
And we happened to just create this group me. Someone started it, and there's like 86 of the 96 of us in there with no admin. And it's so kind and positive. Everyone's helping everyone all the time, sending outlines, inviting people to parties. Hey, we're going to this event. And we actually are just like a very unique class. I don't know if that's normal, but we're all just like best friends with each other. I found a little group. And it was very like, I could like breathe after the first week. I was like, okay, we can do
Yeah.
this.
I imagine there's a sense of camaraderie in the shared experience of going through law school together. And Kevin and Hayley, you both talked about that community. Maybe I'll toss it to Chris, but open to any of you. Did you find that finding a community, making friends, building a study group or friend group, is that something that you took some effort to do at law school, or is there just like you naturally fall in with the people who you work well with?
It's funny. I'd love to take a first stab at this one because I kind of got dragged into a friend group unwillingly. You know, it wasn't my intention to make friends. I had no goal or plan to. I didn't join any student groups early or nothing. I ended up just really falling in with a lot of people from my section, and we played basketball at 6 a.m. every Wednesday before our first class in the morning. And I think, like you were talking, Erik, there is a lot of community through struggle. But I think there's just a lot of mutual respect too that I've seen in my section with people acknowledging the work everybody else is doing. And thankfully, I've seen a lot of people picking people up when they have tough days, or sharing notes or sharing outlines, all the things that I heard law students would never do. The classic fable of people ripping pages out of the library books. I
Right.
think might be an old chapter in law school. Hopefully, it certainly hasn't been my experience.
Yeah, for any of you, was there any of that competitiveness that you hear about, that you read about in 1L, or, any of the unpleasantness that makes the rounds online, those urban legends of law school competitiveness? Was that a problem at all?
I think there's definitely healthy competition with my class. Like you can tell it's there, but it's all very like kind camaraderie. Like, oh man, you got the job, good job, like, and you're not actually mad about it, but you're all competing against each other. But I think it's a lot more you're competing against yourself. Like, I want to beat my grade from last semester. I want to push myself to get this job. I want to push myself to this. So it's a lot of just you're competing against yourself, not against others. That's how I felt though.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I have goals. I want to achieve those goals, and I let my section know, what my goals are, and they're like, awesome. If I could, I would do whatever I could to help you achieve your goal, but we just happen to compete against each other, unfortunately, for grades. But it's like, if you had a question for something, if you missed class, you needed notes from somebody, they would give it to you. There was no, oh, I can't do that because I need that A and I need it more than you. Nobody says that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would add on similarly and say that I think there's so many things in the structure of law school. You mentioned grades in the curve that set up competition, also competing for journals and
Mhm.
trying out for moot court and that kind of stuff. But I think what's really important for me that I like about WashU and I encourage all students to look for is one where at least it seems like good sportsmanship. Like people aren't totally broken down if they lose. People who win aren't super prideful and putting others down. That there's some excitement about the competitive nature because that makes getting a position great. But it also makes losing it not so bad because there's going to be more, and you respect the peers that you were competing against. And there's always going to be some parts of law school that are always a measuring stick. But I think like how you use that measuring stick against each other is really, really important in your cohort.
Well, my school is more chill than yours, so deal with that.
It's all right. We can all be number one. It's fine. It's the LSAT Demon daily ranking systems allows for a three-way tie for first place. Don't worry about it. All right, Chris, you mentioned journal, moot court, extracurriculars. Maybe we can get into the classes and the academics of school in a little bit. But since you brought it up, what did y'all do for extracurriculars? Did you do any extracurriculars? Was there something that you would recommend or something that you tried out that you said, well, maybe that wasn't for me after all? What are your thoughts on that? Is it best to get out there and try to do that stuff, or should you just hunker down and focus on your classes?
I can take a first stab. There are a lot of opportunities in law school, and I came into law school working in higher education before, working with freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in undergrad. And the one thing I didn't want to do myself was sign up for 55 different groups that had 107 meetings a week and try to balance that with school. I wanted to be a little judicious in the group that I chose to join. And so there are some ones that I joined as well, but also at least at WashU, a lot of the ones that are really time intensive, like your journals, your moot courts, those start your second year. And so your first year, there's all kinds of affinity organizations. And I think I would join those when they seem to build me up. They made me better for having gone, and ones that didn't seem like they took away or required a lot of work to go. And there's going to be groups across the spectrum for you to go. And for me, my first priority was always just grades and trying to get through 1L with my legs on the ground. So I only joined a couple.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I only
I'm
joined the groups that would give the most free food during lunches, and I stand by that decision. So that's my biggest, just kidding. I joined ones that I was actually interested in, like Pro Bono Initiative and like the Women's Law Caucus. But occasionally I would be known to attend like an environmental law, love environmental law, but it's just not my cup of tea. But I have gone to a few of those events just because they get the best food. So
I rate that. I think that's great. It's interesting that Chris, that you were talking about that moot court and other things don't pop up till second year. Moot court was open right away. I think lots of groups at UVA were open right away. They don't seem to, I don't know, like delineate based on grade year, I guess. So I auditioned or tried out for moot court because that's part of my goals. I was like, I want to improve my advocacy. And there were a lot of people that tried out, and I unfortunately didn't get it, but it was a great experience anyway. I was like, I was of course bummed that I didn't get on the moot court team, but I could also try again next year if I really want to, which is nice. And that experience is like they gave feedback on how you performed, on how good your advocacy was, and I took that with me on my way. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise too, because I was like, I want to focus on my grades. I want to make sure I use my extracurriculars and extra time wisely. And so in not getting the really intensive moot court really helped me out in the fall. But the other extracurricular that I participated in, and it was kind of mandatory because of the culture at UVA, is softball. Everyone talks about that online. It's like, oh, UVA plays a lot of softball. They host the softball invitational every spring. And I saw that. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I didn't really take it too seriously. They take it seriously when you get there. But it's all fun. They have a section regular season for 1Ls. It's all first years competing against each other. And then there's a tournament near the end, about a month before finals. And then second semester, you get put into the Sharks with everybody else for softball teams, which is really fun. But that was such a great outlet to get away from law school for an hour and play a game.
Something you think you'll do all 3 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I caught the bug.
Do professors play as well, or staff at the law school, or is it just
Uh,
students?
I don't think so. I think it's just students. Professors will definitely come watch. My contracts professor, big shout out to Professor Satir. He came to every single yeah, in the fall, I think he came to every single softball game that we had. So
Hell yeah, #1 fan.
yeah, of course.
What else are you looking forward to in 2L? You gonna give
Um,
moot court another shot, or on
I
to other stuff?
I definitely am interested in that. I this semester I just got on a journal. I'm on the Virginia International Journal, and I just did a site check actually this summer. I was a little worried about that because I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's basically unpaid labor to help our legal scholars out, so it's fine. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm also going to be part of the American Constitution Society, which is a more liberal version of the Federalist Society. So if you're interested in that, see if your law school has that. And then, yeah, probably going to try out for moot court again. But there is the saying out there that I heard from first year, they scare you to death. Second year, they work you to death. Third year, they bore you to death. So I'm trying to be a little cognizant of that and not doing too much. So
Gotcha. Hayley, does that saying ring true to you? Because you are now a rising 3L. So is it true about work you to death in 2L?
If I had $1 for every time I've said that phrase this last year, let me tell you, I'd be the richest woman here. Yes, that rung true for me, but I also know part of that was my own fault. I don't think it like has to be the end all be all. I decided to go a little crazy and took 17 credits my spring 2L year, which I don't recommend you do. My school caps us at 16 and you have to like pay extra to take one over that.
You
But
you didn't even get a time turner for that?
no, I couldn't enter that. I just the way that my prereqs, I'm in a criminal law path, and the way all my prereqs lined up, I just had to take the classes that I had to take at that time. So that's what we did. And on top of that, I was working at the LSAT Demon. I work at my local district attorney's office. I'm a prosecution office as a law clerk, and I was a research assistant, which was required as part of the scholarship that I got. Your second year, you had to be a research assistant for whatever professor needed you at the time. It was paid, but so it was almost like a stipend on top, which was really nice, but it was required. So I was basically working 3 jobs while taking 17 credits. Do not recommend. I did survive and it's okay, but typically you're going to be taking more classes and then you're also going to be working or doing some kind of research assistant clerk type position at the same time. I think that's why it's a work you to death. And you also get really comfortable. So I think you're like, oh, I know what to do now. I can take more than 14 credits. And then you're like, just kidding. I should have taken 14.
Chris, how many credits have you already picked your courses for next year?
I have, yeah, and I guess I'll be the oddball compared to Kevin and Hayley. And there's that fable of the ants and the grasshoppers, the ants that are working hard to prepare for winter and the grasshopper that's just hanging out. I might be the grasshopper of the bunch because I didn't do a journal. I'm thinking about moot court, but who knows? I'm in like 14 credit hours and feeling fine. And there's a little bit of method to the madness too. And I think what I've noticed in a lot of legal hiring is that it's happening earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. And firms are, I mean, the process is well underway and almost over at a lot of places. And your 2L job is often where you'll end up working. If you work at a firm or something like that, it's almost assumed if you don't do something to ruin it, that offer could be there for you on the other side.
No.
And that hiring process starts way before journals and moot courts, at least at my school. And so when I was starting this podcast and I said the word that I would associate law school with as professional, what I meant was it's truly a professional school in that like the end goal is to get a career or job that you want to. And so for me, I've always weighed those opportunities against, are they going to be something required for me to work in the field that I want to, getting the job that I want to, or is it just worth it so much for me because I'm excited, passionate to do it? And so far, I have not found an overwhelming amount of commitments that I've walked into running them against that test.
That's exactly why I didn't do journal either. I valued my mental health more than putting something on a resume. Doesn't mean other people don't love the journal, but it wasn't going to benefit what I want to do in the future, so it wasn't worth the downsides. or the
I
positives
think,
for me, but it is for plenty of other people.
yeah, I think that's what both Chris and Haley just said is really important. Do what works for your goals and do it well because I think if I had a different goal, I would not do journal either. Or if I didn't, if I wouldn't have tried out for moot court or something if I had a different goal. But if you give it your best shot on whatever you do, then I think you're making the most out of the law school experience that way.
I'm glad you mentioned mental health. Health generally going to be critical and something which I think probably many incoming law students fear they're going to lose in some sense or another. So how did you make time for health? How did you prioritize, or did you not? Or is that something that you're working on? Maybe talk about how you found time for yourself, for working out, for doing whatever it is that you needed to keep yourself healthy.
I can start. And I think I might have approached my work during the semester a little bit differently in that I forced it to be within like a 9 to 5 window. Really didn't want to do much at home if possible. And so this first semester, I set like an unrealistic goal of like, I'm just going to do all of my readings while I'm on campus, sometimes like the day of before class, sometimes right after if I have a break. And I didn't think there was any way I'd be able to do it and actually retain stuff and participate in class and learn well. It was totally manageable, and it still has been since. And I think law school reading is a little bit like editing papers. You could sit there and edit a paper for years if you wanted to, and you probably still wouldn't finish. And same with the deep dives into cases and the legal reasoning. But when you realize that all of that work is for just the outcome, what is it going to take to get the grade that you want on the exam? And how much return can you get on pouring all of this energy into it? And so I think when I
You're not
started
graded
structuring
on
my
your case
studies,
briefs, right?
yeah. For me, I don't know about the other schools here in the pod, but the only grade we ever got is the final exam, and all of the courses, 100% of your grade. And so I structured my work like that. And to answer your question, finally, that left me a lot of time in the evenings to spend with my girlfriend and our dogs and hobbies and exercise, and leave a lot of time for myself, which I think was absolutely critical, because the times in the semester when I don't give myself that during finals, I'm a little bit more like Hayley, I think, of a 12, 13-hour grind, haven't looked up from a book, just kind of crying. Takes a serious toll. But there are some students who work like that all semester long, and it starts to show, I think, after a while.
Yeah, burnout is so real. I follow a similar philosophy to Chris because I was like, I really don't want to experience that sort of thing. I experienced something similar when I was working before law school, and I was like, okay, I kind of know how that works. I think working gives a big advantage to that. But even if you're a KJD, you can totally figure it out too. Just be mindful of what your goals are again, and how to organize your time in an appropriate way. So for me, I mostly did 9 to 5, although I had classes that started at like 8. So that was a little rough. One thing that I really was worried about struggling with was being so far away from home. I'm from Washington State, and I go to school in Virginia, which is almost as far as you can get in the United States. I can't hop on a plane and go home very easily, financially or just time wise. So I was really worried about that. But what I told myself, and we actually had a speaker come in to kind of talk about this before and during orientation, which was nice. But one thing I told myself was like, okay, I'm going to set time aside to just play video games with my friends from the West Coast. I'm going to do that, try to do it every night. And I think it worked pretty well. And they're my biggest support group outside of the people at the law school, and I love them very much. So, but I don't think I could do law school without setting that time away and communicating with the people that I love. So.
Some similar thoughts here too. I do not study well at home, so I won't leave the law school till I'm done. Very rarely will I try to do anything at home. But that being said, I won't do anything on the weekends. I will not touch anything on a Saturday or Sunday. Sometimes Sunday evening, if there's something super important Monday morning I didn't get to. And then once we got to choose our schedules too all year, I made sure I didn't have classes on Fridays. So I kind of had a 3-day weekend, which meant a little bit longer hours Monday through Thursday, but then I wasn't touching anything law school related. Maybe my jobs, but not law school related Friday through Sunday. That saved my mental health. Having a great friend group to like just take breaks with. Our little career development office has candy. So we'd go like, okay, we just need to take a break, go walk and get candy, come back up to our, keep studying again. and have a cry corner. We all have our own cry corner. I've got a good stairwell spot. Sometimes you just need a moment and then you come back. And but then one of the biggest things that I didn't do my first semester that I regret, I don't know if every school does this, and I know every professor is different, but some of my professors had passes where for that you had 3 random passes you could use on any day you wanted, and those, or 3 or 4 or whatever, and those are the days you couldn't be cold called on. And I've never in my life like not read for class, not been prepared for class, but you get to law school and you realize, holy crap, there's so much to do. There are some days you're just not going to be prepared for class. And I thought like I cannot use these passes. And it's not like you got extra credit or something if you like saved your passes. You just like, and no one knew that you weren't using your passes. So my second semester of law school, I started using my passes, and I end up using, now I use all of my passes pretty much every semester. And that has saved my mental health, because then just for that day, I could just take a step back, relax, pay attention to the class, give myself a little break, and not be so like high strung for the whole day. And that would be my biggest tip is if your professor gives you passes, use them.
That's got to be a big thing to allow yourself, right? Especially if you've been a great student your whole life, you've never struggled with getting stuff done, completing all of your assignments, having all the reading done, which I'm sure is the case for many people going to law school, to suddenly feel like, oh, I'm behind. That's
You
gotta be
always feel
tough.
that. To be perfectly honest, you always
That's just the
feel that.
constant feeling, is you're always
Yeah.
behind.
Always behind.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if you're comfortable with being slightly uncomfortable, I think you'll do just fine. Because I was doing the readings before class, and I was trying to be as prepared as I could. You know, I hardly ever missed a class. I hardly ever missed a reading, but just doing those exercises, you know, kind of like what Chris was talking about, you could read the case over, you know, as much as you'd like and spend as much time as you want on it, but you never really know if that's good enough. And at a certain point, you just realize that the classes don't really matter and how well you're prepared necessarily for cold calls. It's more of just, oh, I need to be ready for the exam, and what do I need to take away from those classes and the readings that I'm assigned instead.
Yeah. So Hayley, you mentioned using those passes if you have them. Rest of the group, any other things that you didn't do in 1L or didn't do early in law school that you would change your approach to classes, to the work that you did? Maybe let's just stick to like academically, like in the classroom or with your homework, your reading, anything that you would do differently or the way you approach your study.
I was told the case brief, everything. And I did follow that for a few weeks. And my contracts professor, actually, he told me, or like he assigned us to turn in a case brief so that he could help us out. Because he was that was just our small section. So he was very worried about us, you know, getting off on the right foot, you know, for school. But for me, it just didn't work. Like I didn't like it. I'm a book briefer, I think is what they call it. So I like to write in the book and underline the important things, and, you know, very opposite of the LSAT Demon style when you're doing the test, right? You don't write down anything. But on law school, you know, when I have it in front of me, it's like, you know, I have my notes and my book all in the same place, and I just really liked having that in front of me. So I never case briefed anything, which is contrary to a lot of law school advice.
And I'm happy to follow Kevin's advice too, because I found I was struggling at the beginning of law school because I really wasn't following any of the advice that I was giving in my classes, actually. So I love RC. Any Demon heads probably know that, or old podcast fans might remember some of my old ones. It's my favorite. And the thing I always tell students is to know why you're reading what you're reading. Focus on the why more than the details and all the little nuances and the factual statements. Yet when I was reading these cases, I wouldn't really stop to ask myself that. And so my notes and my outlines I was building were like these isolated pockets of random information and some briefs on cases and facts we said in class. But I wasn't really tying this into a comprehensive, cohesive understanding of why are we reading this selection of cases this week, and how does that build into what we might next week, and even sticking with contracts. If I would have just read our first cases and said, like, how does this relate to offer or acceptance as it relates to contracts, and then pull out of the cases what I needed to organize that, my outline would have been done, my work would have been so much more efficient, and it would have been usable information. And so my big mistake was reading cases so I could perform well in class in cold calls, the snappy recall and that sort of stuff. That never became usable for me because I didn't understand why we're reading it or focus on applying that early enough. So that would be my recommendation following my mistake.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that LSAT prep is also law school prep. Is that
I
right?
think if you do both correctly, they should have a lot of overlap.
Great. All right. Well, let's talk about something fun. Property. Maybe it's your favorite class. I really just want to ask you, what was your favorite class that you took in 1L and why was it property?
Why was it never property? Um, I knew coming into law school I wanted to be a prosecutor. That's been my goal. So criminal law was obviously my favorite. I was waiting. We took ours second semester, so I had to wait a whole semester before I could take it. But one thing that I liked more than I expected to like, that I did not think I was gonna like, was con law. I'm still not like a con law head geek. I'm terrified to take con law 2 in the fall. But I think I was able to come in, that was second semester as well. And I feel like after one whole semester, I was able to be like, okay, I can come into this class, and even if I don't agree with all these opinions, I can learn something, and like I can see a perspective I wasn't ready for. And a few cases actually changed my opinion that I've had for years. And it's like, was this cool moment of like, this is what law school's about, like being open to like new ideas and changing, and I don't have to be stuck in these ways, and I could still believe what I believed here, but like, and I started to separate like my morals versus like my legal brain, like they can have different like goals. And that was really cool for me to like, I don't know, I felt like I was expanding who I was as a person, which sounds really cheesy, but I loved con law for that.
Nice.
I will take this opportunity to dog on property before I talk about my favorite class. And I loathe property. I did fine. It was okay. But a lot of classes, they really almost build like a crescendo. There are big topics you're covering the whole time, contracts, torts, they all kind of build into this cohesive understanding. Property is like walking into an ancient antique store in a city that you've never gone to in your entire life with an owner who doesn't care if you buy anything and really wants you to leave. And so you're trying to like find where things are organized and nothing makes sense. And also the antique store has been open since 1600 in another country. And so you're trying to figure out what currency works and how do you buy stuff. Hate it. Some people love it. Obviously, it's quirky and funky, but not for me. I was shocked actually how much I loved Civ Pro. And I like even went in with the mindset like I was gonna hate it. And so like I tried to like pretend the whole entire time at the beginning of the semester, like, oh, this is horrible. I hate it. It's just one of the few classes in law school where there's like a test for everything. There's a roadmap for everything you do. You know where your gray area is going to be in each possible issue spotter or thing you're doing. It was like a breath of fresh air compared to con law or some of the other ones where it's just I don't want to say made up, but it's made up.
Chris, you are gonna love evidence.
I hope so.
Kevin, did you have a favorite?
Yeah. I think I can get. I was gonna say I have kind of a tie between Civ Pro. I really like Civ Pro for the reasons that you described, and property. So I'm going to answer your question and say yes, I do like property. And for Chris, I know and Hayley are not big fans, but to me, property felt very similar to Civ Pro. Actually, it felt like there were a lot of rules, and it was just like, oh, I could follow along pretty easily. But maybe my brain is weird. I don't know. And that's probably the more likely scenario. But I think what also helped is my professor was really good in that class. I was really worried about property being really boring because in first semester you take all doctrinals at UVA, and second semester you take property and con law plus 2 electives. So I was like, okay, I'm a political science guy. I think con law is going to be fine, but property, I've heard some stories, and that's going to be the boring class. And I was really worried about that, but she made it so fun. Like there were classes where I wasn't really excited to go to, but every time we had property, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have a great time. So, plus we talked about baseball, and if Alla was here, maybe she'll be on next time. She knows that our Demon Daily episodes were baseball podcasts, so we talk about baseball. Yeah.
Awesome.
I felt like property was those math questions where it's like Rita has 50 apples and she gives 2 away. How many does she have? And the answer is the dog went up the tree. Like that's what property was. You're like, it's like the diagramming that Nathan and Ben scream at you not to do for LR. Like that was what property wanted you to do. So future
Yeah.
Hayley has to bar prep is not excited to revisit this topic.
There's rules for everything, but they were written by King Henry. Like, why am I still doing what he says? It's 2024. Leave me alone. I don't know.
I'm starting to think more and more that that might be a testament to my professor for explaining it really well in such a confusing way. So I don't know. Maybe it's not so much the material, but the professor that was really fantastic.
Yeah, talk for a moment about professors without naming names. like what makes a good professor in law school?
One thing that I've told a lot of students who are exploring WashU, or I saw on tours and stuff like that stop and talk, is that it was a huge selling point for me, the professors that I met at WashU, because like certainly at most law schools they're going to be like intellectual giants. They're going to be so intimidating, but it's clear, at least in the classes I've had, maybe I've been lucky, or the faculty at WashU, they feel like they're lucky to teach rather than many professors have had my background. They want you to feel lucky to learn from them. And I think it's so early in a classroom, you can feel the difference in the instruction. And they check in with the class to see when they're learning, when you're good on a topic, they're willing to slow down, speed up, add new things based on what the class is doing. And they're available. They're communicative, and they take time, even individually with you as a student. Go to office hours, meet with your professor, please. And you can tell like they're not rushed. They're not angry that you're there. They're happy to talk to you. And so that for me is what's made professors really, really good.
I'd agree with that for sure. I'd also add, for me, I've really enjoyed classes where professors got a little more hands-on with you, made it a little more practical, like gave real-world examples, made you like maybe role play. I know some people hate being on the spot for that, but even though it's like awkward, it's also like the best learning experience, at least for me, to like, here's how I would actually do this. This is how I'd actually go out there and do it right now. And I've also really appreciated a lot of the I love all of our like full-time professors, but the adjuncts who are out there working a law job and can come in and give you it's just a nice connection of like, oh, they're not 20 years removed from this. They are doing this right now out there and they can teach me what I need to know. I appreciated that a lot, but that doesn't mean professors who haven't practiced in a long time or ever are bad professors, because there's plenty of ways they can implement that kind of stuff into their class as well.
Yeah, I think I agree to everything that's been said so far, but again, I'm going to gush on Virginia here. They're literally, my professors are the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. They have experiences that, are so intriguing and so challenging. And they just handle it with ease. It's like they're lifting a 100 pounds of bricks with one hand and just, doing it as a weightlifting exercise, right?
Mm.
Like my torts professor, he writes the supplement for most law schools around the country. He's been around for a long time. I've had several professors clerk at the Supreme Court during their time. I had a lot of my professors, worked at Congress, or, they've taught somewhere else and then they come here. Like they have these experiences that really show not only how deeply passionate they are about a particular subject, but also that they've experienced it so well that they could explain it to somebody else so well too. So it goes a long way to show again how, kind of going back to Chris's points, like if they're invested in the material and in you, then you'll get that investment and see it right in front of you.
Well, it sounds like you all love the schools that you're at, which, I mean, makes sense. You're at the three schools tied for first place in the LSAT Demon Daily early summer 2024 rankings.
Correct.
So not surprising. Now that you've been at law school, looking back on your decision, both in where you chose to apply, what it was that you were looking for in law schools, and then eventually how it is that you made your choice, just the decision of where to go to law school, how would you think about that process now that you've actually been there? Like, are there things that were completely off your radar back when you were applying that now you realize, wait, this is super important, I should have been looking at this? Or is there stuff that you thought was super important, which turns out it isn't actually that important? Basically, anyone who's going to be applying to law school, what should they be thinking about that they might not already be thinking about?
I thought I was doing this when I was applying. I don't think I did a great job of it, but I think for me, if I were to go back in the time machine, I don't think I would choose any differently, but I think I would, when I'm making my law school decision, also make the decision of this is where I want to work. Not necessarily where I go to school, but this is the region I want to target. This is the type of market I want to do. Not necessarily the specific job you want to have, because I hope school shows you things that will change your mind or expand your possibilities. But another aspect of legal education being a professional school is that from the first week, second week, third week in your school, there are people networking, there are opportunities to get connected in your region, there are students who are building pathways to firms they want to work at, sometimes even before school. And not that it's like something you have to do to be required, but for me, I think it's difficult to separate your career journey from your ultimate path in law school because it happens so fast, so fast. I think the first career fair we had at WashU, I don't know about any of you, where there were firms from all over who came to talk, like tables full in the largest rooms in the law school. It was like October or something. And so they wanted us to be ready to talk about our legal goals and to have resumes ready and everything that early. And to me, it was such whiplash. I was not ready for that. I wasn't prepared for a career conversation in October. And that's really work I could have been doing all the time before law school as my law school search.
I would agree with the location you want to live after is a very, very important factor for the school you choose to go to. You do so much networking. I mean, we have networking events, I swear, like once a week, if not more. Clubs are bringing in attorneys in the legal field. They'll recognize you. They want to hire people from their alma mater. Doesn't matter if someone comes from an Ivy League school to Utah. They're like, I'd rather have a BYU or University of Utah student because they live here, they're going to stay here. So I think that's very important. As much as you, I know it's hard to decide now, but as much as you can decide where you want to live after, that's very important. That wasn't a change for me because I knew I wanted to stay in Utah, and I just at the time didn't have any interest in BYU, so I knew University of Utah was my only option. And luckily for me, they are a really great school. But looking back, other than looking at bar passage rates and job placement rates, which are both great for the U, I didn't even think about other factors, which luckily just turned out that they had these with this school. My school includes bar prep in your tuition, so you don't have to front all this bar prep money once you're done. Ours is Themis is what we use. It also included a ton of other prep materials, like you guys have heard, probably Quimby, Barbary. Well, Barbary's free to all 0 through 3Ls. They gave us West Academic and Cali and a whole bunch of other websites. They included subscriptions for that for you, which was amazing. And then just also having a school that also has a good, we haven't talked about the curve yet, but I'm sure anyone who's listening has seen terrors and tales of the curve on Reddit, but choosing a school that has a higher curve could be a deciding factor. My school curves to a 3.1 to 3.3. So typically everyone in the class is most likely going to get a B plus. A few people get an A minus, one or two will get an A, and maybe one or two will get a C plus. Everyone's going to be in that B minus B or B plus range, with the majority being in like a B plus range, which for all of us type A's who want good grades, first you'll have to adjust that a B is an amazing grade in law school. That's like the best grade you're ever going to get. The B is the new A, okay? But like knowing that most of the grades you're going to get is like a B or a B plus, I think is comforting. Like, oh, I'm not going to go in here and like risk failing. I don't even know a student in my class who has ever failed a class. I think that's just for mental health, that helps, and also not risking any like academic probation, considering someone's curve when deciding on a law school is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of going back to the word game that we played at the beginning, my word was supported. I didn't really look too much outside of the non-legal, or I mean, I didn't look too much at stuff too much outside of the legal stuff. I ignored the non-legal stuff.
Mm.
And so when I got to UVA, I realized I was so blessed with just having a chill atmosphere where there was, it was still stressful because it's law school, but you didn't have drama. Like I've talked to a lot of other people at other schools through my internship this summer, through just networking with other people. And it's like, there's drama at other places. And at UVA, it felt like there wasn't any. And maybe I got lucky in that aspect. So I was really happy with that. I just felt supported from the community around me. Never felt like I was left out to dry or anything like that. But on the other hand, you can look so much into job factors, into career outcomes and all that. But at UVA, if I felt supported in that way too. I think several or longtime listeners would know that I want to be a judge. I don't necessarily want to be a lawyer, which is a weird thing to say when you want to go to law school. But it's weird because I know what I want to do in 20 years, but what I want to do in between is not so certain. And UVA is really helping me with that. We're trying to figure out like I'm doing some soul searching and trying to figure out what my passion project is, but they also know people who have struggled through that, or like, here's a great place to go figure out something that you might like. It just feels like I could do anything and they would have my back and help me figure out what the best thing is.
Awesome.
Judge Kevin, in 15 years, when I file my lawsuit in your district court, just let me win. Just one.
Yeah, yeah.
Just one. Just let me win one time. That's it. Gratuity. It would be a gratuity you're giving me.
Yeah. You pay it forward, right? That's the saying in law. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kevin, Hayley, Chris, this has been just an excellent conversation. I'm sure the listeners are going to take a ton out of this. I have one last question I want to ask before I let y'all go and enjoy your evenings. What is one thing that you have learned about yourself during law school?
You'll have the toughest one for last. That's a hard question. I think kind of what we talked about before is that everyone who goes to law school is a pretty smart cookie. The problem is the jar is really big and there's a lot of smart cookies in that jar, whatever school you go to. So I've learned about myself that while I do have high expectations for my own performance, like being okay with not meeting those high expectations all the time is totally okay. Took a little bit of a journey to get to that point. But now that I'm on the other side, I'm happy about that.
I think for me, I've learned that I can still keep up with these kids, which might be only a helpful thing for our older students at LSAT Demon to hear, which we have a lot. But I think one of my fears was that the last time I was in a classroom for me was going on like 10 years ago before this year. It was a long time. My undergrad, they would ban your cell phones and you couldn't have devices. A lot of my classrooms. And now I felt like it was going to be a world away from my experience. And it really wasn't. Learning is learning. And the nice thing about studying for the LSAT is a large part of it is learning how to learn and learning the way that you learn best. And those lessons still translate no matter the medium.
Oh, I have learned so many lessons. It's so hard to pick just one. I think a huge one for me personally was I learned how to trust myself. Coming into here, like always second guessing myself, like, oh, if that makes sense, like, do you understand that? Like, oh, okay, like, just second guessing myself, talking to professors, writing exams at work, like turning in a paper, like, if that's okay, like, you can rip it apart, like, no worries. It's always been that way. And learning just to trust myself that even if I don't know what to do, I now have the tools to like learn how to do it the right way, and then I can also like be professional when asking for feedback and not have it come off as this like I don't trust myself, I don't trust the product I'm putting out there. So it's built my confidence a lot. Not that I've been perfect, I've failed many times, I've done things wrong, but just learning that I have the tools that I need, I have the resources that I need, and I can trust the people around me to like pick me up when I fall. So learning to trust myself and that confidence has been like the best thing that's come out of law school.
Thank you all so much. This has been a real treat.
Well, thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks, Erik.
All right. Thanks all for listening. Hopefully you found that helpful for you rising 1Ls out there. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.